So I'm wanting the part that isn't the gold in her lips to be darker, so I added more watercolor to that, and here I'm taking some gold acrylic paint and bringing it into her eye a little bit just to help pop that out a little bit. I kind of want it to look like the same accidents that happened in the background. But really I'm intentionally putting it in there just to make it a little bit different than the other one. So I added just a little bit more blue in a really transparent layer just to make her ears a little bit darker, because I realized they were the same color as the highest points of her face, and if you want them to look like they're further back, they need to be a little darker. And adding a very opaque layer of blue so that you really can see the line between her lips. I'm going to really be working on adding some darkest darks and lightest lights at this point to give it that final layer of depth, and you want a lot of contrast in your paintings and your values. Value means how light or dark a color is, and you really want to get your darkest dark, your lightest light, and few values in between. And often artists will even exaggerate that. So if something isn't really fully black or fully white, they will exaggerate it just because it really makes it pop. It gives it definition. So you're the artist. You get to exaggerate, you get to play, you get to make it whatever you want. My advice is to exaggerate those values. I've seen plenty of artists do lots of really pretty pastel work, and I certainly can appreciate that. I just think there's a place for everything, and I'm telling you the rules. Go ahead and break them. So really, in the beginning of when I started painting, a lot earlier, I would have thought I was finished, and now I just think that I really need to add layers and layers and layers before it looks complete to me. So I'm going to be going over it quite a bit to deepen some spots up. I want the edges of her iris to be darker than the center, and adding some more red to the left one so that it looks different from the right. And taking that same color and bringing it into her cheeks. Using a transparent layer so you can still see the gold and the colors underneath, strengthening that line under her eyes. I guess normally you wouldn't be trying to save the line underneath, but in this case, I just found it interesting and different. So I'm really trying to bring in some shadows with that watered down blue acrylic on the right side of her face, just to give a little more variety. And you want to consider where your light source is coming. I kind of always tend to have the light source coming from the right, so the left, I'm dyslexic. The light source coming from the left so that the right side looks more in shadow. And I just think it's more interesting having one side or another a little darker. I guess I don't really like perfect symmetry. And I'm going in and adding some shading around her forehead so that it is starting to look more like a rounded shape here with the watered down acrylic. So since I want to bring that flower forward, I'm separating it from her hair a little bit with a sharp line of the blue paint that I can then feather out so that you don't notice it being a sharp line. And here and there around her face, just keep going around your painting, considering what needs to be deepened, what needs to be added to. Sometimes you want to take it back away. So you can see right there, the moment I added that darkness to the left side of her hair, it really pushed her neck forward and separately from that. That really makes a difference. Because she's wearing a shirt in this picture, I want to create a little shadow under the edge of that with the blue paint. Now I'm kind of starting to think about some final little highlights in white. This would be a good time to use the white that I showed you, that was the cheaper white that isn't that titanium, because it's really stark and therefore really pops forward more. Paint over pens would be really helpful in this as well. Little highlight on the left of her cheek, the center of her throat. Just keep going around and looking and deciding which parts are coming forward, which parts are receding. Here's that really black. That's when you know it gets serious. So the first place I like to add it is in her pupil. Do you see how immediately adding that level of deep contrast really brings a different level of depth to the painting? So I'm going to be using that in her lash line. But really sparingly. What I don't want to do is go around the whole painting and just make it look like the whole thing has been outlined in black everywhere. You want to really decide which is the darkest point. Don't overdo it with the black. And I'm adding some white highlights in her eyes so that you can see some reflection. And that's when they really come to life. Going around deciding which are those highest high points on her face that just need little tiny touch-ups of white to really give the painting the highest contrast in value. Really sparingly with this white paint. This on her cheek was a very thin, opaque layer of the titanium white. Here I'm going back with the gold acrylic paint that I have and creating some earrings because I just love adornments and decorations. And to me, she just looked sort of fancy, like she needed some earrings. Adding some little tiny highlights of the gold in little lines that move toward the center of the pupil. So I added some blue around the edges of the earrings. I don't know, that part didn't get filmed, but they definitely needed to show up a little more, so that was with the blue acrylic paint. I feel like she's finished, and I love her.
Thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed my video, please like and subscribe. You can also find me online at robinsnestartschool.com.